Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Good Morning Truckee. We are fully remote this morning. The town council chambers are actually being used for voting this morning. So if you haven't voted, get out and vote. There's some important measures on the ballot today. So I'm filling in for Jim Porter. He is a partner of mine here at Porter Simon. And we've got a great program. So we're going to be talking about the COVID Delta variants and the effect on Nevada County. And then we're also going to be discussing the Truckee construction projects that are going on. We're going to be joined by Harry Weiss of the Tahoe Forest Health System, Dr. Scott Kellerman, the Nevada County Public Health Officer, and Dan Wilkins of the town of Truckee. As always, we'd like to say that these programs are being run throughout the month on Channel 18, and they'll be available for viewing on Truckee.com and TahoeTruckeeMedia.com. And we'd like to thank our sponsors this morning: Tahoe Forest Health System, Porter Simon, Dixon Realty, Truckee Tahoe, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, NV5, Auerbach Engineering, JK Architecture Engineering, Tahoe Truckee Media, Sierra Sun, Moonshine Inc., 101.5 Truckee Tahoe Radio, the town of Truckee, Truckee Tahoe Airport District. And we'd also like to recognize the committee that puts together these gatherings and brings this to you every month. And that is Lynn Saunders and the chamber staff of Ruth Garrissey, Melissa Williams, and Carolina Pacheco. Also, the Kelly Cutler of CAT, Mayumi Elegado of Moonshine Inc., Ernie Grossman, Gerald Herrick, Fire Department Board, Tony Lashbrook, Jim Porter of Porter Simon, Deb Ryan of TTCF, and Ted Owens of the Tahoe Forest Health System. So we've got a full program today, and we're going to dive right in. We're going to take all questions after the speakers speak. So if you have questions, you're going to go ahead and either text those questions to 530-412-3719, or put your questions in the chat if you're watching on Zoom. And after the speakers are done, we'll field those questions. So Nevada County has 488 confirmed cases of COVID-19 for the week of August 30th through September 3rd. That is the highest number of weekly cases since the start of the pandemic. We're fortunate to have with us this morning two of the finest experts on what Nevada County and the Tahoe Forest Health System are experiencing, and here to provide information on the Delta variant, vaccinations, boosters, mask mandates, event limitations, and much more. So let's get started with, Dr. Scott Kellerman, who will be introduced by our District 5 Nevada County Supervisor, Hardy Bullock. Hardy?
Thank you, Raven. Welcome, everybody, this morning. And it's an honor to be able to be here this morning and introduce Scott. Dr. Kellerman has been a longtime friend of mine. I think I first met Scott when I was about 10 years old. He was our family physician. And I remember talking to him in great detail about health and being a doctor and what it was like in a small town. And then Scott disappeared. He went to Uganda and he gave up a thriving practice here in Nevada City to go abroad and build hospitals for 10 years and create a nursing school and work with people that needed the help and his medical acumen to create a sustainable way to live and treat just a dire healthcare emergency that country faced. And so I've always had great respect for Scott and the work he's done. We continued forward ski patrolling together. I ski patrolled my way through college, and Scott was a physician, and we ran accents together and skied together, which was a wonderful time. I think about that a lot. Most importantly, recently I've seen Scott, his integrity and really his compassion in handling the business of the county and all of the health needs that we've tackled in the last 12 to 18 months. It's been incredible. There's a big article. I don't have the article in front of me, but if you look at the Union newspaper, there was an entire page dedicated to Scott and his contributions to our county in the recent months, and really his sage guidance using science and community health data to guide the principles that keep us all safe and well and healthy. And I'm really proud of Scott. I'm proud of the work he's done, and I'm looking forward to working with him over the next couple of months, in particular before we have a change in leadership in that position. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott and look forward to hearing what he and Harry both have to say today.
Thanks, Hardy. Thanks, Raven. I appreciate that. You got screen share. Can people see? Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hardy. And thanks, Raven. I appreciate the introduction. We're going to talk about Delta and COVID and how it's impacted his community. But actually, I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, I know that's what it is. I'm invited. I'm going to talk about collaboration and how it all works. And Hardy had asked me about my job. Yeah, it's been challenging, but it's been some of the best times of my life simply because I've gotten to know people at Tahoe Forest and seeing Hardy again back from the ski patrol. You've changed, Hardy. But I guess we all have, but I'm hoping in a positive way, and we can use some of the things we've learned from this virus to move us in a positive direction of collaboration. So that's going to be the center of my talk here. As Hardy mentioned, I've worked in southwestern Uganda. I lived there for 12, 13 years. And Truckee was very involved with the work there. We work with the Pygmies. We sing and dance a lot. I'm sure Hardy's going to be doing that before the Board of Supervisors meeting. I mean, it kind of lightens things up and compresses the hierarchy if everybody dances together. Over the years, we've come up with a 175-bed hospital, which is ranked one of the best hospitals in East Africa, and a 400-student nursing school for training. A lot of the people in Truckee have collaborated on bringing healthcare to a remote area of Uganda and actually East Africa. The reason I mention that is we talk about vaccinations. The first vaccine that was gene-based was not for COVID. It was for Ebola. Ebola, where they had a big pandemic on the border next to our hospital in eastern Congo, carries 2/3 mortality rate. I'll move off that slide. And in an area that is roadless, without electricity, no running water, they took this DNA-based vaccine, and which was actually made by Johnson & Johnson, and were able to do immunizations. And about 6 months ago, the Ebola epidemic was declared over. So if they can pull that off, and in a very remote area of the world, to take care of a pandemic, why cannot we do the same in Nevada County? This is actually our neonatal ICU. We have no paved roads around our hospital either in the whole district, but life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, by the moments that take our breath away. I'm sure you all can appreciate that. It's strange. We have a virus that is transmitted by breath, coughing, droplets. So it takes our breath away in many ways. And so anyway, it's a difficult disease to deal with. And anyway, we'll launch into it. It's COVID-19. One of the things to look at on this photo are the spike proteins. We're going to talk a little bit about immunization. First case in America, they did electron microscopic look at it, and those blue little dots are COVID-19. That's the first case that came to the States. These are the numbers actually from yesterday from Hopkins of the areas of the world that are more problematic, and we're lighting up the map. It's really difficult. Some of the data is hard to obtain from Africa and India, for instance. Death rate, they say 44,600,000 is probably substantially more than that, because some of the areas of the world, particularly India, I think they reported like 800,000 deaths, and certainly it was over a couple of million. We've given over 3.5 billion doses of this vaccine. If somebody doesn't think it's safe, I mean, look at those numbers with almost no side effects. These are trends in California. You see, you had a spike around fall last year. You remember that winter, everything locked down. We were all pretty miserable at that time. And you see the little bitty spike here that, again, which is what we're dealing with. And in California, and you see it's dropping off. It's tailing off a little bit. Not so in Nevada County. Look at those numbers. We're still spiked. We've had higher numbers than we had in the fall and winter. And so we're really being hammered by this virus right now. The numbers in Nevada County, we have 671 active cases, which makes it real difficult to track all the contacts of these cases. We, not so long ago, I think we had 10 deaths in August, and we're having a few more and a few more deaths in the queue right now. And so the death rate is going up. This Delta variant affects people who are younger, it affects them quicker, and it makes them sicker. Those are the kind of watchwords for the Delta variant. We have a vaccine. We've given over 112,000 doses in this county. We have about 60% of the county is fully immunized, and another 8 to 9% are partially immunized. We're moving in the right direction, but we have ways to go. This is how the vaccine works. Messenger RNA makes the body produce a spike protein. Remember those little things on the outside of the COVID? It's important for the virus to replicate with those spikes. So all it does is produce some spikes. That's all it does, nothing more. It doesn't affect the nucleus, doesn't do anything else. And then your body comes along and sees those spikes, B cells and T cells, and recognizes the spikes and says, those aren't good, let's kill them. And it makes antibodies, and the antibodies go do their job. The interesting thing is the B cells and the T cells hang around, in memory T cells and memory B cells, and they wait. And they wait around, and they can wait for a long, long time. And if you get exposed to the virus, they'll go get it. They'll go kill it. So that's the reason we have protracted immunity from a shot that's given, months earlier. The Johnson & Johnson just takes it a step ahead. It's a DNA vaccine, tells the body to make messenger RNA, and the messenger RNA makes those spike proteins. So it's really the same process. Now we hear about breakthroughs, and we got breakthroughs, but the reason for breakthroughs is you get infected, it gets in your throat, goes up to your snaz. That's the reason the nasal test can be positive, and then it works its way down to the lungs. If you've been immunized, your antibodies can kind of taper off after a while, so it doesn't stop it getting in your throat or in your nose for some people, about 15 to 20% of the people that come down with it, but it takes a while to go down to the lungs, and by then your memory T cells and memory B cells have kicked up and produced a lot of antibodies and stops it being really serious. So although people have been exposed who are immunized and have breakthrough infections, traditionally they're not sick. And you see UC Davis, this graph of who's in their hospital, who's in their ICU, who's on a ventilator, and it's rare to find the patient is vaccinated. The ones that have had problems with developing robust immunity are the ones that are immunocompromised, and that's the reason we recommend a third dose for those who are immunocompromised. I want you to look at this graph, and this is Western and Eastern County. Look at those numbers. Western County, see, it's almost an asymptotic rise there. What happened in Eastern County? Come on, dudes. For some reason, you're doing a great job in Eastern County. We've not seen that, that rapid rise of the virus. And this is a tale of two sides of the same county. And the reason is, we have Ted and Harry here. Anyway, I'm going to praise your healthcare system. I think Truckee is a very integrated community. I think the community works very well together, and I think the hospital is community hospital. People appreciate it as community hospital. I was chief staff of our hospital when it became part of a big healthcare system, and I felt uncomfortable about it. Voted against it, actually, because I thought that we could do like Tahoe Forest at Sierra Nevada Hospital and remain totally embedded in the community where people appreciate what you're doing. And the results are, even in the hospital staff and employees, over 90% are fully immunized, with another 4% partially immunized. There's hardly a healthcare system in Northern California that can reproduce those numbers. And it is all about relationships. There's a photo taken in Africa, and we can't do it without collaboration. Couldn't have pulled off a hospital in Africa, a nursing school in sub-Saharan Africa, and a remote area without collaboration. And the same thing applies to this virus. How do we all work together? We have a virus that knows no boundaries, knows no political persuasion, knows no religious affiliation. It's a common enemy. The only way to deal with it is to work together collaboratively and to focus on, although we may have different opinions on how to fight the virus, we're all on the same side. So it's a privilege to be public health officer, and it's a privilege to get to know the folks in Truckee. You all are doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kellerman, thank you so much for a very informative and interesting presentation. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions and follow up here after Harry Weiss goes ahead. So Harry is the, the president of, the CEO. My screen just, this is the problem with Zoom. There we go. Harry, sorry, I missed you. All right. Harry's the president and CEO of the Tahoe Forest Health System. Harry's a calm voice of valuable information our community is needed during these uncertain times. His analysis of numbers, trends, and what it means to us is impressive, as well as his strong leadership to ensure the health practitioner team is supported and the institution is able to provide all aspects of healthcare our community needs. So welcome, Harry Weiss.
Good morning, everyone, and happy to spend a few moments with you. Thank you, Dr. Kellerman, for all you're doing countywide. And we really appreciate these efforts to protect our community. Let's go to the next slide. Just wanted to share with you, Placer County, Nevada County, and Washoe County have great websites, and you can go to tfhd.com. We've got convenient links there. We also have links to federal guideline resources as well. So this can be a great place for any community person to go to find out what we're doing or to understand what's going on around us. Our Tahoe Forest Health System has been active in receiving patients from other health systems, not just from COVID, but also from the fires as well, or due to diminished staffing capacity to care for patients in certain service lines. So we're happy to try to help out other communities all around us, to the northwest, to the northeast, to the south. And we helped one hospital what was closed for a time as well. Really, we have many friends and partners out there, and we try to be available for them. For the past 19 months, we've maintained a registered nurse hotline. It's available 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The number is 530-582-3450. So if you have any illness concerns in and around what you think might be COVID or something, give them a call and they can help navigate you to the best resources here in the Truckee region. I do want to share on behalf of our team, they're a very courageous team. It's been a tremendous, dedicated effort. They're probably a little tired and a little stressed. I think, to be honest, they're humans. They love our community, but it's been a long journey, and there's no end date for when this is going to occur. But this is probably one of the most important public health efforts our team could be involved with in the last 100 years for all of our residents and our guests. And that's been involved with testing, with treatment, with vaccinations, and we've done thousands and thousands of tests and vaccinations, and really proud of what I believe our community, our region has it's hard to track because it's accomplished from so many different areas. We probably have one of the higher percentage populations that is vaccinated as well. Next slide. We have provided more than 22,400 lab tests just ourselves. We've found a 6.4% positive lab test result on that over the last 19 months. if we look at our 3-county region, which is Western Washoe, Eastern Nevada, Eastern Placer, and this is as of last Friday, 3,359 positive lab tests. And a patient could have more than one positive here as they're tested more than once, but that's about 7 to 8% of our population when you look at our full-time population within this region. On an inpatient basis, we've tested or treated 449 inpatients as of Friday of last week. Back in 2020, our peak inpatient was 12, and so far this year it's been 6. So you saw that the graphic was very different in Eastern County than it was in our Western counties. Next slide. And we've been tracking as of every Friday for the last 7 weeks now. You can see how the positive COVID-19 lab tests are totaling up. And this is from 3 counties. This is Western Washoe, Eastern Placer, and Eastern Nevada. So it's not just one county. 20, 50, 70, 91, and 73, 103, and then back to 67. So we think it'll be instructive if we can have 2 or 3 more weeks that start to fall. We're just pleased our numbers are really small compared to other geographies. Next slide. Just looking at the U.S., it looks like the U.S. has had 2 peaks, one roughly around August 27 and another one around January 8, with valley periods in between. Looks like California's peak is somewhere around August 31. We hope no new higher peaks happen, and we're all cheering for lower volumes in the weeks ahead. You know, we're probably a month or so away from also starting to work on flu activities. So our team's going to be busy with viral activities for a while. Next slide. The third doses, these have been generally limited to those with specific immune or health issues. We're not active in that at this point, but we're aware that Safeway and some of the other local pharmacies may be making those available. We've heard it's happening for immune compromised folks. As you might be aware, there's been numerous executive orders written at the state level or the federal level. And so we're really working really hard right now to make sure we're fully compliant with all of those. And as Dr. Kellerman shared, we're 90% vaccinated, heading for 95%. And I've had other hospitals ask me, you know, how have you done that? Because some are at 65 or lower, but it's, we just try to, you know, really be transparent with our team. Our team does want to be healthy. They want to be available to care for our patients. And we've had probably about 168 employees become ill over the 19-month period, but none have had to be hospitalized, and all are doing well with that. Next slide. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harry. I appreciate it. So we're going to open it up to questions. I have a few, but I don't want to monopolize it. So Dr. Kellerman, if I may, on one of the slides that you presented, you showed a graph where the spike in Nevada County had a higher percentile than California in general. Do you have any insight into why that may be?
Hardy might at the board meeting today. There's a real contingent of people that are refusing to follow the, you know, what I think is reasonable public health guidelines. I mean, what public health does is just try to, you know, protect the health of the public. I mean, and it's fairly obvious, but there's people there that are very obstinate about it, and I'm not so sure how. I mean, this is a whole political discussion, or maybe philosophical. How freedoms, you know, do we give up certain freedoms in order to protect the public? And the answer is yeah. I mean, we wear motorcycle helmets, seatbelt. We may have a beer, but if we have a few more than we should, we don't drive. I mean, all these things to protect the public, and there is a contingent in I have to say Western County that it was problematic, and they're very vocal. And they ascribe to some medical theories that kind of border on snake oil. So, and they're the ones getting infected. It's mainly this disease of the unimmunized, and I think you don't have that in Eastern County, thankfully.
All right. Well, thank you for that candid response. And then, Harry, I have a question for you. As a parent of a toddler, the anecdotal commentary around is that this Delta variant is hitting youth more than the first variant of COVID. Are you seeing that at the hospital?
It's been, fortunately, it's more present than the earlier versions, but still at a very low level in our region, which we're very grateful for.
Okay, great. And then Lynn and or Ted Owens, do you have questions from the community out there that are watching?
I do. I have one for each of you. Dr. Kellerman, as the county public health official, do you have the authority to establish a county ivermectin pilot to address the COVID situation? Would you be open to using ivermectin in the county? And please discuss your reasoning.
Yeah, I should have a standard answer because I get that question a bunch of times every day. I use a lot of ivermectin. It's a great drug, but in sub-Saharan Africa, it's used for scabies and it's used for river blindness. We see river blindness where we are in sub-Saharan Africa. It's an antiparasitic drug. It's a phenomenally effective antiparasitic drug. Studies in America have been, and there are some anecdotal reports that I took ivermectin and I got better. But the medical literature does not support that. There was a huge study done by the University of Alabama published just last week to show not only is ivermectin ineffective, but it has side effects. So if you follow the major data, you're not going to use ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. I mean, it's a great drug for malaria. It's really good for rheumatoid arthritis. Although the science behind it is some of these drugs are immune modulators, and there's a problem with COVID with immunity, and it kind of augments your immune system, and that's the reason I think that it's shown some efficacy for some people, but as far as being an antiviral, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, they're not. Oh, and parenthetically, really quickly, is we do have great treatment for monoclonal antibodies, Regeneron. So anybody that's sick and potentially could get sicker, these medications, treatment medications, will keep you out of the hospital, keep you safe. So don't go for, I call it snake oil. Go for the real stuff that'll keep you out of the hospital and keep you well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. I have one for Harry. And you did touch on this, but do you plan to require employees of the hospital be vaccinated, even for employees who have natural immunity or who have religious or medical issues with the current available vaccine? And how would this affect the ability for the hospital to provide services?
Fortunately, over 90% of our team is vaccinated and heading to 95%. We are honoring all of the mandates that are issued by the state or the federal government. And so you do have to be vaccinated. You are allowed a religious or medical exemption, but you still have rapid testing, often frequent testing that has to occur. But yes, we are compliant with any state or federal mandate.
Thank you, Harry. Here's another one that came in via chat. What's the best information source to track Truckee numbers? The hospital and East County numbers don't line for either one.
The numbers that I've shared in the PowerPoint, I think, are probably the most relevant because that really picks up Eastern Placer, Eastern Nevada, and Western Washoe. We track those regularly. We also show on our website, I think, numbers of positive lab tests that we physically find. But so getting a presentation like this where you're seeing the 3-county total, I don't know that we post the 3-county total for our region because we don't pick up Western Placer, we don't pick up Western Nevada, we don't pick up Eastern Washoe, we just pick up our geography. So the numbers I'm sharing are the real numbers for positive lab tests within our 3-county region.
Thanks, Harry. Here's one more that came in through chat. Considering schools week, can we expect to see an increase in community spread for East County Truckee schools?
I think there is a risk of that. We're certainly cautious. We're monitoring it, and we've been active from a public health perspective with anybody that wants to be proactive on protecting their health. So we're hopeful that the trend where we went from 103 2 weeks ago to 67 or so, 63 last week, we're hopeful that trend stays even though school is in progress.
That's all I have. Ted, did you get any?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple, so I'll ask each of you one question. For Dr. Kellerman, might things get worse in the colder winter months? The trend is going down. Do you expect that might to change?
It's possible. I mean, nobody knows where this virus is going. I mean, there's going to be books and articles, and I had a friend of mine that's a historian. How's history going to judge the way we've dealt with this pandemic? Certainly being indoors is more problematic than being outdoors. It's less likely to be spread outdoors. And as Harry said, in schools, you have to watch it like a hawk. But we know how it's spread. We know how to prevent it. And if people follow, traditional guidelines, we should be okay. It's probably going to circulate at a low level. Coronaviruses, historically, 15% of upper respiratory infections have been done due to coronaviruses. So they're fairly ubiquitous in our community. Will this just kind of be a thing like the flu and, kind of somebody make you a little sicker, where we need a booster every year? Nobody knows. I hate to say, Hardy's going to a board meeting. What's going to happen in the board meeting today and what's going to happen to the virus tomorrow and you ask about the winter, it's all up in the air, but the usual practices of good public health will apply both now and then. If we do that, we'll be okay. And if the immunization rates keep going up, we think in the next 4 to 6 weeks, Pfizer will be approved for 5 to 11-year-olds, and that will, give us far more protection once that age group is immunized also. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. Quick question for Mr. Weiss. Is Tahoe Forest prepared for a surge should it happen? Good question.
Yes, we are. We continually plan for that. And one of the ways we try to prevent a surge is we aggressively treat early symptoms. So we treat quite a number of patients in outpatient settings with like the Regeneron mononuclear antibody therapy or other relevant therapies. But yes, we are ready for a surge should it happen. Monoclonal antibody therapy. Sorry about that.
The rest of the questions I have were largely answered in the presentation. So back to you, Lynn.
Raven.
All right. No further questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Kellerman and Harry Weiss. We really appreciate your time, the informative presentations, and kudos to the community as well for doing their part here and trying to keep this virus from spreading and keeping it down. So now we're going to turn to Dan Wilkins with the Town of Truckee. He's the Director of Public Works and Engineering. He's been with the town for over 20 years and manages all the town's roadway maintenance activities and capital construction projects, which if you've been out and about, you've seen stuff going on. So he's going to give us an update on what's going on out there and what we expect in the future. As always, if you have questions, text them to 530-412-3719, or you can just type them into the Zoom and we'll hold all the questions for the end. So Dan, take it away. He's a good guy, a better fisherman.
Thanks, Raven, and glad to see you here instead of Porter this morning. I wanted to quickly introduce, at least to the Zoom audience, Becky Bucar, who's the Town of Truckee Engineering Manager. Becky could wave. And Alfred Knotts, who is our recently hired Transportation and Transit Manager, who comes to us from Park City, Utah, and prior to that was in the Tahoe Basin. So these are two of the people that make a lot of the stuff that I get to talk about happen. I also would like to thank Harry Weiss for his steady hand and information that he provides, which is always great for the community, and to Dr. Kellerman for his service to not only Nevada County, but to humanity. And we could only wish to have a resume that stacks up to Dr. Kellerman's. So with that, I'm going to go through and provide some information on how we're spending money this summer. The town has 4 projects that are currently under construction. I'll get into those in a bit. This is a photo of the section of Brockway Road from Palisades Drive down to the Truckee River. We're building a 10-foot wide trail and sidewalk that'll connect basically the area next to 7-Eleven down to South River Street. That's a heavily used corridor for cars, and we see a lot of people walking on the roadway shoulders there, both summer and winter. So this is a $2.2 million project. We got half of that money from a state grant, and then the other half of the funding is coming from town sources. We're paving your streets this summer, so we've got about $4.5 million of sales tax, road sales tax money, as well as general fund dollars that are being used to repave a number of the streets. Some of you may have noticed that you went home from work on a given evening and you showed up the next morning and the street was ground up, and then you went home 2 nights after that and you came back the next morning and the street was freshly paved. So with these roadway projects, we've got multiple dimensions that we consider when deciding how to implement them. We're thinking about safety of the workers who are doing the work. We're thinking about the productivity of the contractor, because productivity equals cost effectiveness. We're also thinking about public inconvenience and how we can minimize that. So every one of these projects we work on goes through that kind of a evaluation process so we can decide how to best implement a project while balancing cost effectiveness and minimizing public inconvenience. And then also noise issues come into play in the evening. So what we try to do is in our commercial areas where noise issues are less of a problem at night, we try to do a lot of that work at night. And in our residential areas, we're more likely to do that work during the daytime, because that also tends to be lower traffic and less public inconvenience that comes along with those areas. Another project we're working on is removing vegetation from the roadsides. And I know Dr. Kellerman and some of our healthcare officials have been under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of questioning as to what their motivations are for a given project, whether the project makes sense or not. I don't want to suggest that removing vegetation from the roadsides is anything of a similar nature, but a lot of similar dynamics come up. We've got all of the streets you see in green on here are streets where we've gone through and done tree removal and vegetation removal on the roadsides. What that does is it protects utilities, so we don't have as many trees growing up into utilities. It provides wider fire breaks. So if we have a wildfire that comes through Truckee, it provides a better opportunity for our first responders to, number one, evacuate people. So if you've got burning vegetation on the sides of the roadways, it's not as close to the edge of the roadways as it otherwise would be. And it also provides firefighters better opportunities to protect structures and protect the general public. Now, with that said, removing vegetation in front of someone's house is very personal to that individual. So we get a lot of interest from various individuals as to whether or not a given tree or a given bush or a given piece of vegetation is really necessary for removal, and we end up with a lot of one-on-one communication with our residents through that process. What you see on this map, Tahoe Donner, we did vegetation removal on 60 miles of streets up there last year. We've done 20 miles of street out in Glenshire this year, and then we've got Sierra Meadows and Prosser that we're currently either working on or will be working on in the near future. We're working on a roundabout out at the Donner Pass Road Coldstream interchange. For those of you who have driven through there, it doesn't look like much right now. The contractor got late start on the project due to a couple of reasons. So they're doing some utility work this year. They're not going to tear the road up this close to wintertime, but then next summer they'll be coming in late April or early May and converting that section of roadway to a modern roundabout at the Coldstream interchange. So Donner Memorial State Park is over here to the left of the exhibit. Work that we're going to be doing next summer, we're going to be extending Church Street to intersect with Glenshire Drive. So any of you who have been out to the Truckee rail yard and driven along Church Street out past Truckee Tahoe Lumber Company, you go across a couple sets of railroad tracks and then the road dead ends. What we're going to do next summer is we're going to extend that road and intersect it with Glenshire Drive, building a new roundabout at that location. So now residents who are going to from Glenshire won't, in the downtown Truckee area, won't need to go through Glenshire and Donner Pass Road. Instead, they'll be able to get a more direct route into downtown Truckee. The other thing we're going to be doing is Trout Creek in this area. The creek didn't used to be along Glenshire Drive. It used to come down Bridge Street. This particular creek drains Tahoe Donner. Used to run right through the middle of downtown Truckee down Bridge Street and discharge into the Truckee River. At some point back in the 1800s, when the town site and railroad was developed, the creek was rerouted about approximately a mile along the current alignment that it's on. And it was basically just put in a ditch at the time. So this exhibit to the left, that's actually Trout Creek from last week. These are some retaining wall that the railroad had built at one point that's failed, that's actually fallen into the creek. What we're going to be doing is removing all of this steel and these steel pilings. We'll be reverting the creek in this area to a more natural state. And then the photo over here to the right of the slide, that's what Church Street currently looks like. And as I said, we'll be extending that next year. Another project we're going to be building next year is the Truckee River Legacy Trail. So the next phase of it, which we refer to as phase 4. So what it will do is it will connect the hilltop area next to Cottonwood down to the Truckee River. And there will be a trail that runs along the Truckee River almost to the West River Street Highway 89 intersection. So this section of trail that crosses the river will not be built next summer. That section is actually in Placer County. We're working with Placer County to get that piece constructed, but we've got to get some right-of-way and some more funding for that section of trail. To build this, we're hoping to get about $2.5 million of grant funding, and then we would marry that up with about $2.5 million of Measure R sales tax dollars. We also want to throw a shout out to the Land Trust here. The Land Trust purchased a key piece of property referred to as Truckee Springs, which allows this trail, critical link of this trail, to be constructed. And then they've also provided funding to match some funding the town will be provided to construct a bridge from the Truckee Springs property over to West River Street. So you'll have a direct linkage near what's called the Old County Courtyard there. We're also putting in a new fuel tank next year. You'd ask, why are you telling me about this? The reason is this is actually a partnership between the town, the fire district, and the PUD. The three of us got together a year ago, made a decision that we're going to convert our diesel fuel supply to a product referred to as renewable diesel. So it has the same chemical constituency as hydrocarbon-based diesel, except that it's created from organic products like fallow and soybean. So our diesel supply for the town, the fire district, and the PUD is currently 100% renewable. And that's a major step forward in our combined efforts as public agencies to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. By adding additional fuel storage, it will improve resiliency of our utility operations. What it will also do is provide adequate storage so that we were able to accommodate the needs of other utility providers that may be interested in joining in this venture in the future. So beyond 2022, we've got some other work planned. One goal is to rehab West River Street. So those of you who've been in town for 5 or 6 years recall what the Brickletown area, the area between Spring Street and McIver Crossing used to look like. Looked very similar to this. Lots of cars parked, no sidewalks, no safe place to walk. What we did over there is we converted the entire street frontage and put in curb gutter sidewalk, reorganized the parking, in some instances reduced parking in favor of putting in sidewalks. So our goal is to give West River Street the same treatment. This is a bird's eye view of the section we'd be working on. So this is Bridge Street right here. This is Riverside Drive, Barry Hinckley or Flyers gas station is right here. So this area you see in green, this would be curb gutter sidewalk on both sides of the road. We would be reconstructing the parking lot next to Jack Steiner, and we would be reconstructing and creating new parking in the area behind the Flyers gas station and the vacant lot that's next to it. This will be about an $8 million project. We'll be partnering with the Truckee Donner PUD and other utility providers to put those utilities underground as part of the project. This bridge you see right here across the Truckee River will be the connection to the Truckee Springs property. And then we'll also have a goal of constructing a park in the what's referred to as the old county courtyard property. So this area of town between the trails, the streetscape, the new bridge across the river, and the park is going to completely transform over the next 2 to 3 years. This is another exhibit of the streetscape design in a little bit more detail. And this is a rendering of the park next to the Truckee River that we're working on. So that's the old county courtyard property. For those who may not be familiar with it, if you drive along West River Street and you get past where the commercial businesses are, right across the road from the Flyers bulk fuel plant, there's a vacant lot. The street park project for that area would look something like what you're seeing on the exhibit right here. So it provide downtown access to the Truckee River that's open to the general public, which is something we don't have at the moment. Another project we're working on that will be more like a 2024 project will be to improve the curb gutter and sidewalk across the railroad tracks and improve pedestrian safety there, and also put in traffic signals at the West River Street, Bridge Street, and Bridge Street Commercial Row intersections. The traffic signals will better organize traffic through there, and more importantly, they'll improve the safety of pedestrians that are walking and milling about the downtown area. So currently, the West River Street, Bridge Street intersection is very difficult to get across if you're a pedestrian during busy time periods. And what this will do is effectively create a traffic signal that will allow pedestrians to stop traffic so that they can get back and forth across the street there. What it will also do is provide what's called a quiet zone, which would include some improvements to the track crossing, which would then allow the railroad to no longer have to sound their horns when they come through downtown Truckee. Doesn't mean they wouldn't sound their horns. It means that they would no longer be mandated to, which they currently are. So that's another element of this project. Other things we're thinking about for the longer term, we're looking at building sidewalk on Jaboom Street. So this is a section of Jaboom Street from the backside of downtown Truckee that runs up to the new Spring Hill Suites and the new apartments that were built up at the top of the hill near the Stockrest Springs intersection. Because of the increased pedestrian traffic in there, we want to improve the sidewalks and pedestrian safety in that zone. That's going to be controversial because the inexpensive way to do this and least disruptive way to do this would be to make Jaboom Street a one-way street in either the eastbound or the westbound direction. Then you could take the other travel lane and use it to put in curb gutter, sidewalk, and pedestrian improvements. I think the modifications and traffic patterns that will come along with that will be viewed by some residents as being problematic. So the town will have to go through a process of comparing that against a project that would widen this section of roadway using retaining walls and heavy construction techniques that would probably cost about 5 or 7 times as much as converting the street to a one-way street. So it'll be a fun public policy conversation when the time comes. Another project we're working on is what's referred to as Pioneer Trail and Bridge Street extension. So that would be a project that would connect Tahoe Donner. So this is the Tahoe Donner subdivision here to the Pioneer Commerce Center area, which is over here. So there's actually some existing dirt roads in that area, as well as some existing road corridors that have been planned as part of the long-range transportation planning that's been done, as well as an opportunity to connect Bridge Street up behind Casa Baeza and under the freeway up to this road. This would be a $40 to $50 million road. The only way I see it getting built is through some form of funding assistance that doesn't currently exist. Possibly there could be state or federal dollars available for something like this, but very likely a project like this would require some additional source of funding that's generated locally that does not yet currently exist. So it'll be interesting to see whether there's support for this project that would result in funding being generated within the community for this project or not. So that'll be something that'll be playing out over the next 3 to 4 years, I would expect. This is a close-up of that. So again, Pioneer Commerce Center over here to the right of the screen, Tahoe Donner to the left. It's only about 1.5 miles that separates those two neighborhoods. Currently, to make the connection, you got to drive all the way through town, clog up some of the other surface streets. Having this kind of a connection effectively provides another access to Tahoe Donner, and then would make basically travel to and from Tahoe Donner much more convenient than it is today. Envision DPR. So about 2 years ago, we constructed curb gutter sidewalk in front of the Truckee Donner PUD and in front of the Truckee High School. The goal would be, with this project, would be to do the same thing and tie into some of the great improvements that the hospital has already implemented in front of their property, and continue that sidewalk corridor all the way to downtown Truckee. So we'd have continuous sidewalks from downtown Truckee all the way to the Coldstream interchange, which would be about a 2-mile long corridor, which is our main commercial corridor in Truckee. Downtown streetscapes. So this is Jaboom Street, Bridge Street, Church Street. These are other projects on the longer range design horizon. And again, it would be to construct those curb gutter sidewalk improvements in additional areas of the downtown. We also are going to be talking over the next year or two about renewing Measure R. That's our quarter-cent trails sales tax that helps us build a lot of these great projects. This map that shows a bunch of lines on it represents the town trails plan. Solid lines are trails that are built. Dashed lines are ones that are planned. So there's a lot of dashed lines on here. And one of the things that we'll be asking the public in the not too distant future is whether they want to continue the sales tax that's currently in place to continue to build some of these great trail projects that we have. We're also going to be looking more closely at alternative forms of transportation. So we currently have a fixed route transit system. We're going to be evaluating the possibility of microtransit. That'll be happening over the course of the next year, and also evaluating what role a bike share program could play here in the town of Truckee. Microtransit, it's kind of like a subsidized Uber service. Placer County has implemented one. There's been one in Squaw Valley for a couple of years now. And what the town's hoping to do is take some of the information that's been developed through those pilot projects, potentially do a pilot project of our own, and then do some analysis of what microtransit could offer the town of Truckee. With bike share, similar thing. There is a lot of bike share that is occurring in larger cities. It's a little harder to implement from an economic standpoint in more rural areas like Truckee. It's not impossible. It will likely require some degree of subsidy. So one of the things we would be looking at is how much subsidy it would cost to put an effective bike share program into the town of Truckee, and what kind of benefits that would offer the community as a whole. So these, the microtransit and the bike share, are both projects that we're going to be working on over the course of the next year to a year and a half. With that, I'll stop and be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you so much. A lot of really exciting stuff going on. And I've got a tree kind of in the roadway, town roadway easement. So I'd just like you to come over personally and take a look at it just to make sure. A kid. All right. So I've got a question. The work that's being done below Cottonwood on Brockway, is that going to be a multi-use trails like the Legacy, or is that going to be a sidewalk with a bike lane next to it?
It will be a multi-use trail.
Okay.
So bikes and pedestrians are both welcome to use it. And we will also have the Class 2 bike lanes. So that's the 4 to 5 foot wide shoulder stripe on the roadway for road cyclists to continue to use.
Got it. And the roadway improvement that is envisioned going forward, either let's just say Donner Pass Road or any roadway improvement that's being done, is there a directive, a goal, a plan about undergrounding all the utilities whenever there's improvement?
So the town's interest has been to, whenever there's a complete transformation of the street, I'll call it. So if we're going out and repaving a road, generally we're not looking to do utility undergrounding as a part of that work. That's more of a routine maintenance type project. Project like Brickletown, West River Street, where we're completely rehabilitating and remodeling the entire street corridor. We always try to coordinate with the utility providers to get the utility undergrounding accomplished as a part of those projects. It's very tricky. It really complicates the projects because it introduces more players, more funding, and there's lots of interesting conversations regarding who should be responsible for funding the cost of the utility undergrounding. But up to this point, and I hope we continue, the town council has decided that it's worth the extra effort and extra money to get the utilities underground at the time that we're doing the major street rehabilitation.
Great, thank you. Lynn, Ted, do you have questions from the audience?
I don't.
All right.
I have one, and so that's the only one I'll ask given the time. Dan, will the micro transit system be integrated with public and private services?
To the maximum extent possible, it will be. The public services that the town's providing, we will absolutely integrate microtransit with those. With private services, that'll be dependent on how well microtransit and whatever the private transportation service is, how well they mesh, and also the interest of the private transportation provider and their interest in collaborating and coordinating with the microtransit program.
Thank you. I think I'll hold the rest, given that we only have a couple of minutes. I'll turn it back to Raven.
All right. Dan Wilkins, Director of Public Works and Engineering for the town of Truckee. Thanks for being with us this morning. Now we're going to turn it over to stump speeches. Lynn, do we have people lined up? Two, I believe.
Yeah, I do. I have two. One I received the other day from the Sierra Community House. They're a nonprofit with a mission to connect and empower our community through family strengthening, crisis intervention, hunger relief, and legal services. And they want you to know about their Close to Home Truckee program. And it strives to end gender-based violence, transform social norms, build community leaders, and create a region free from violence. This is a little different from a traditional volunteer program, but it's a great way to learn about your community, forge lasting relationships with people from all walks of life, multi-generational, and change the region. So if you want to know more information, go to their website at sierracommunityhouse.org. Second one I have, shameless plug for the Chamber of Commerce. Our annual awards dinner. It's an award event coming up September 24th, 5:30 to 7:30. We're holding it outside. It'll be at a hangar at the airport on Chandelier Way, staged primarily outside so that we'll have fresh air, plenty of room to spread out. Our theme this year is Come Together. It's a casual outdoor event to bring the business community together, have fun, listen to some music, and we will announce the winners of 7 different community awards that we've received nominations from the business community, and the board reviewed and determined the winners. So anyway, it'll be a great night to come together, show some community pride and spirit. Tickets are only $40, and you can go to truckeeawards.com to purchase those tickets. Hope to see a lot of you there.
Thanks, Lynn. That's going to be a fun event. All right. Well, that's the end of this Good Morning Truckee. Thank you so much to all of our presenters and everybody that joined us here today, this morning on Zoom. We look forward to seeing you next month and every second Tuesday of every month. So everybody have a nice day. Get out there and vote and enjoy. Take care.